Well, I was raised in a non-Christian family until I was about 11 years old. No believers in the family at all. And when I was 11 years old, in December, 3 days before Christmas in 1963, my dad passed away. And so for the next number of years, I was a kid that never really got in trouble. We lived out in the country, so we'd go hunting and fishing, and on a given weekend, we'd just be gone most of the weekend, and I had a lot of freedom to do that sort of thing. We never really got into any mischief, but as I got into my teen years, so as we got into my late teens, we got into the drinking and partying and that sort of thing. And I always, a lot of my friends got into some trouble, some of them in serious trouble. I always seemed to manage to miss it, and I really wasn't have a bent for that. The thing is, though, I was never taught how to handle my emotions. There was a lot of things I probably didn't learn. No excuses. My dad, I believe, within 6 months before he died, gave his heart to the Lord, and there's reasons why I know that. But I believe today that he changed my destiny and the destiny of my family. So I learned a little bit. He tried to make us instant Christians, but I didn't like Christians. I certainly never wanted to be one. I labeled people that I knew were Christians to be kind of weird until I was 32 years old. Made some really bad decisions in life. Really wanted to do well in life. And I was assistant manager of a fairly large company in my late 20s. But I wasn't really qualified to be that. There was never any training or anything, so I was really arrogant, and I basically said, if you can do it, I can do it better. In the meantime, through a whole set of circumstances, we got connected to this little church in Toronto that I would call a country church in the middle of the big city. I knew nothing about church. My wife wanted to go there, so we did. I would think, these people are really nice, but they want something. They must want my money. And so I would be out of there really quickly. There came an evening service. They befriended me. And I didn't realize at this time I was really a hurting unit, I guess. I'd heard people say, we used to go to the services in the evening, and somebody said, well, if I ever gave, or when I gave my heart to the Lord, I remember this, it was this song or that song. And without telling anybody, I just kept it to myself. I thought, well, if I ever gave my heart to the Lord, which seemed really strange to me, I would have to make sure that I knew what it was. So one evening, I was sitting in the back, and they had a special speaker. This was just a really tiny church, not a lot of people. And this guy came in, and he was dragging his leg, limping up to the front, and he was the keynote speaker of the night. And I thought, whew. And he started talking about Naaman. So I was reading the story, and I got way along in the story, and I was all finished, and wasn't paying any attention at all. And suddenly I heard him say, if you're not right with the Lord, you know what you need to do. And I got up, and I had already talked to my wife about it and said, well, if I ever give my heart to the Lord, you know, do you want to be involved and whatnot? So she was up in the nursery. I raced up to the nursery, and I was saying, come on. And she'd go, what? And I was going, come on. And she's going, what? I said, just come on. And we walked down, and we marched right up to the front of the aisle. And the fellow that was presiding over the end, and I didn't know anything about church, and he said, he looks at me kind of sheepishly with a funny look on his face, and he says, so Gil, why are you here? And then I have to, I've always been quite an introvert. I had to say, well, I want to accept Jesus in my heart. And to me, that sounded awful flaky. But I did that, and I realized today that that was the Lord orchestrating it and making me do it so that I would be committed. And then I came to a point in my life where I just did not have any peace. I had these 2 jobs, and I was trying to make ends meet, and nothing was working. I was absolutely just out of sorts, no peace at all. And one day I was leaving and supposed to be going to church, but I had to go to my waiter job on a Sunday morning, and I had begun to really like being there. I looked up in the sky, and I said, God, I don't even know if you're real, but here's what I will do if you will just give me peace. And this is the honest truth. It was like, I didn't see it with my eyes, but it was an impression. It was like God rubbed his hands together and said, about time. And so I was baptized, and we stayed with that church for a while, then we decided to move back to New Brunswick. And we've basically been in 3 churches over the last 30 years. That was when I was 32, today I'm 63. And I've learned through the journey. We've been fortunate enough to be in churches where there was really good teaching. We were in a church where the pastor was very much open to the prophetic word of the Lord, and and he taught us on a lot of aspects. And when we were around there, we were very involved in that. We did street ministry and that sort of thing. But I learned a lot of things through that time because the Lord would reveal things to me at times. And sometimes very clearly, very powerfully, usually when I was alone. And then, and I didn't say this, but when I first got saved, I was probably radically saved. I didn't know anything, I didn't know any of the rules. But when I found out that this God was absolutely real through the things he was showing me, that he could actually impact my life, for about 4 years I absolutely frightened people because I thought it was normal. And I was so afraid of losing what I found. So my wife would say to me, "What is wrong with you? You're like a driven person." And I didn't understand any of that. I didn't understand how it all worked. But over the years, some of it's been an incredibly difficult journey, some of it's been incredibly great. But I realized that God shapes and molds us all through that journey, each of us as individuals, and he really is like a father. And today, I'm just so excited. I'm 63, I have 6 children, 6 grandchildren now. And I believe that I have things and I've learned things that I can impart to them. And so that's one of my goals in life. And I guess that's probably about it. As a father, I've learned that I need to set an example for my kids. Today, I'm very focused on them and even our grandchildren. I will play with little ones, absolutely love them. I pray really constantly for all my own children. Almost daily. I have been doing that for the last year or so. I think prayer is really powerful. The fervent righteous prayers of got it wrong, but of a righteous man availeth much. And I just believe that's absolutely true. And so I try to apply that. I try to be diligent. And I do pray for them every day because I just think that, and I see prayers being answered in the family as well. And I think that is something that I'm called to do. And I guess that's probably about it.